Welcome everyone to Wrasslin Raw!
You're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when the World Wrestling Federation developed a little bit of an attitude. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
Hodily hodily.
Joe Giammatteo.
I hope Fishbone was able to make it this year.
I'm the one and only Jason Bartlett, and we're going to examine WWE history one pay-per-view at a time. And guess what, folks? This is our special WrestleMania Spectacular. This is one of the rare times throughout the year that we get together and sit down and have a drink and have some wrestling. And guys, I gotta tell you, I am very happy to be here with both of you. Very good to be spending in-person time with you.
This is a boyhood dream of mine.
It is pretty great, though. It's nice to get together and be able to watch these live and actually see each other while we watch these.
Absolutely. It's like being a kid all over again, except with booze.
Yes, we never had booze then.
No, never. Angels, all of us. That being said, our format here is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be sticking to the regular pay-per-view format in that we're going to be giving our personal star ratings, and Joe's going to be hitting us with what Meltzer thought from the Wrestling Observer. The difference here is that we're watching this live. This isn't going to be a normal watch-along. What's going to happen is we're going to get to a match, pause the recording, watch the match, and then come back and catch all of our reactions immediately after. So stay tuned, and we are about to hit play and get started. So, without further ado, in this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about WrestleMania 12. WrestleMania 12 aired on March 31st, 1996, and was recorded at Arrowhead Pond in Anaheim, California. Features Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Ready to go.
All right, then let's get into it. The start of WrestleMania 12. Joseph, please press play. All right, guys, so we just got through the intro from start to the beginning of the first match, and my goodness, Vince McMahon is excited about what's about to happen here tonight. Joe, what did you have to say about that?
Well, he was hanging out with Doc Hendricks, I think, before. Yeah, he's really screaming full voice here. I like that this was a short intro. I like that they really featured the Iron Man match only. So it made it sort of gave it that big fight feel to it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that last comment you made about they just had the black and white voiceover video for the Iron Man match. And Bartlett, you brought it up, but I was also thinking about the ring general comment with Bret Hart. That was fantastic comment from wasn't petting zoo. This was like your normal, like, I don't know, like your movie guy, voice guy. So that was the other nice touch for WrestleMania.
Yes.
And Vince seemed torqued up. He was definitely spending a little time with Hendrix and the Saturday Night Live band.
The cocaine jam.
Yeah, completely agreed. And that opening sequence for the Iron Man match was very tasteful. Yeah. Extremely tastefully well done, and then immediately followed up with the early 90s Milli Vanilli that just didn't fit at all. But yeah, a good way to start it, I think. And this is going to lead us into our first match of the evening. Camp Cornette, that being Vader, Owen Hart, and the British Bulldog with Jim Cornette, are going to defeat Yokozuna, Jake the Snake Roberts, and Ahmed Johnson with Mr. Fuji in 12 minutes and 51 seconds. All right, so we're coming out of our show opener, and I have to say, I think the biggest surprise for me in that was that the best segments, in my opinion, by far, were Yokozuna and Vader. Those punches looked great. The action looked great. You saw hints of the men they were before coming to be in this six-man shit show, unfortunately. And I hate to say that because we all know, fan of the Bulldog, fan of Owen Hart, but my goodness, some of this was a little rough to watch. Biggest also takeaway for me is just how much of a fucking monster Vader was walking into this. As far as the match itself, not too sure what to say about this. Certain spots were good, certain spots were bad. I think I might have to go with a 1 star on this one. Ryan, what did you think of our show opener?
I agree with a lot of what you had to say there. Some of the best parts were definitely Yokozuna and Vader, which is a shock, really. Especially because of Yoko. And not just some of the best parts, but some of the longest parts of the match. We started off with those two big behemoths in the ring trading shots, and it looked really good when those were in the ring. And the weakest parts were definitely when Jake the Snake were in there. Jake the Snake, as we've kind of highlighted for a few weeks now, kind of looks terrible when he gets in the ring, and he brought the match down significantly. I mean, there's no way around it. He did. We got Vader and Yoko kind of going back at it at the end of it again to close things out, but the finish was Yoko gets thrown out and we have Vader in there where he gets to land a pretty impressive looking slam. Vader, for a huge guy, got a lot of distance on his finisher off the top rope to get the pin on the guy who ruined everything of this match, Jake the Snake. So we don't get 5 minutes alone with Yokozuna and James Cornette, so that's a little disappointing. I think I'm going to go 1 notch higher than you and actually give it a 2 star because so much of the work was between Yoko and Vader, and I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I'm pretty impressed with Vader and Yokozuna here for sure. From what we hear about Vader, I expected him to be like out of shape and just not ring ready because he's been out. He premiered in the Royal Rumble, right? He debuted at the Royal Rumble, then he was out until now. So
yeah, he had
solid
that injury
2
after.
Months. But he looked great. When him and Yoko were in the ring, it was awesome. Really entertaining. Crowd was into it. Yeah, it had the slow parts in the middle because of Jake Roberts, and the crowd was kind of dying, but then they came back once Yoko came in there. I'm going to go 1 notch higher and give it 3 because I expected this to be really horrible, and it wasn't. It was a little sloppy because you got 6 guys in there. It's going to happen. But I thought it was a pretty good opening match considering, who was a part of it. Probably the best that we've seen out of Ahmed Johnson so far, I think.
Yeah, he looked pretty good in this. I agree.
Dave Meltzer gave this 2.5 stars. He says the heels had to carry this thing, which I don't necessarily agree with that, but he goes on to say Roberts isn't nearly as over as when he first came back and works smart, but is very limited physically because of age and injuries. Johnson is still really green, but it was impressive to see a guy his size do a tope. Yoko looked good considering his weight limitations.
Yeah, it seemed a lot of the same comments I guess we made.
Yeah, and for anybody out there interested in this match, you can see Yokozuna give Vader a side Russian leg sweep. Just an overall unusual and impressive sight.
Bret Hart gave him some lessons on that one.
Yeah. So then what did we have after the match? We had a look at Marlena there, but before that, we had a little bit of a breakdown between Piper and Goldust. And there was a voice giving us this breakdown. It was not Todd Pettingzoo. Do you guys know who it was? No guesses?
I'm just going to randomly throw this out here. Was that Joey Styles?
No. It was, you're somewhat close, Michael Cole. I guess, oddly enough, Todd Pettingzoo is the one that brought Michael Cole into the WWF. And this is sort of how he started before he started as like a backstage guy and a commentator.
Very cool to know. The voice sounded familiar, but it was in just enough of a like TV reporter, no kind of accent cadence that it was kind of hard to place, but very cool. Yeah, as you said, we got that to set us up, and then right after, a great view of Marlena sitting in a room back in the arena somewhere watching a television monitor, and she had her golden rose there with her.
She doesn't seem too concerned.
She doesn't.
Goldust is about to be a part of a back lot brawl, and she doesn't seem too concerned about it.
No, she was just rubbing herself with that rose.
Yeah.
Kind of making out with it.
It looked like one of those Steven Singer gold-dipped roses.
Oh, and for the record, we did get a replay of Goldust blowing the bagpipes. So that was there too. That took us into Vince and the King at ringside, which gave us a little verbal entry into what we're seeing now. We're going to be going into our next match, which we've decided to call Part 1 of the Backlot Brawl. What we see here won't necessarily be the end of this, so we will see you on the other side of Roddy Piper versus Goldust in a Hollywood Backlot Brawl. All right, guys, we're coming out of Part 1 of the Backlot Brawl, and holy shit, how about that time that they punched each other for real? Jesus Christ. That was good shit, pal, to watch. And, you know, it's been a long time since I've seen this match. I have to say, I'm really surprised at how brutal it got and how fast it got that brutal. For some reason, I wanted to think that it was going to be somewhat PG, a little more restrained, but it pretty much started once they hit the catering table, I think. Once Roddy put Goldust's face through the catering table, things lost all semblance of control.
I don't know. I mean, it was pretty violent even before that.
Yeah, it was all one-sided, too, pretty much, for the most part. Just Roddy beating the shit out of Goldust.
And throughout this entire scene, the white Bronco was in the back, the famous white Bronco. Yeah. But at the same time, we can't ignore the fact that Goldust pulled in what looked like a solid gold Lincoln Continental.
That thing was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a fantastic vehicle for Goldust.
Screeching tires, too, which is just a great entrance.
Gold from fucking bumper to bumper.
Yeah.
And somebody, definitely Goldust's head got busted open, and it looked like Roddy's hand might have gotten opened up too, because there was quite a bit of blood being splattered around for 1996.
Yeah, the word is he broke his wrist during this match, and after seeing it, it's not surprising that he did that after punching a man's cranium, like for real, yeah.
Yeah. What was really interesting was how violent it was, though. I mean, this was a straight-up hardcore match that we'll see pretty often in the years to come, but up until this point, we have not seen a just all-out ass-beating like this with violent weapons, and I guess it's pay-per-view. It's not USA who is going to make Lawler give a on-air apology to Duke the Dumpster about it. I mean, just very violent, which was a shock to me.
Yeah, and I think that it's funny because it was both funny and brutal. Like, it was both, very entertaining little piece there. It was probably, 5 minutes, I would say?
Yeah, I'd say that's about right.
Yeah, just highly entertaining.
Yeah, so since this is part 1, we're going to do stars so far, and as of right now, I'm at a 4. Joe, what do you think?
I'm just going to say it's at a 5 for me. There's nothing to not like about it, I think, for me.
Yeah, I'm with Joe on this. It's a 5 for me right now. This was fantastic entertainment right there.
Joe, you said Meltzer didn't give this one a rating.
I tried looking and I couldn't see any ratings at all, even on the other parts of it. So unfortunately, we won't have any of his ratings for this.
Well, that's just as well, because he probably would have been wrong in the end. I don't know that, though, so don't tweet at me for it. All right, we come out of the Backlot Brawl and into our next match. Stone Cold Steve Austin with Ted DiBiase defeats Savio Vega in 10 minutes. All right, guys, coming out of Stone Cold Steve Austin and Savio Vega, the most important thing to take away from this match is that Roddy Piper is on the run from the police in a white Ford Bronco through the streets of Los Angeles.
Yeah, nothing else matters, really.
Yeah.
It's really unfortunate because this match started really well. The way that one of the first comments I had for it was how much Stone Cold and Savio were staying on top of each other, between throwing punches, between rolling around on the ground, between just trading any kind of hit they could get in on each other. They were not letting up on each other. And then we got the word that Roddy Piper was on the phone via cell phone, calling in from the cockpit of the white Ford Bronco, and things just kind of went downhill from there, unfortunately. We had something here that I thought was going to be yet another contender for Match of the Year based on the last time we saw these two in the ring together. and it was very quickly diminished to background action while we were checking in on Roddy, unfortunately. So, guys, such an unfortunate turn for something that I was really, really excited about. I thought this was going to be one of the matches of the night, and unfortunately, we got distracted in so many different ways watching it. Ryan, what did you think of this?
Yeah, I sadly have to kind of agree. I was really looking forward to this match because of the last one. We were saying how maybe we'll have to pick which one ends up being the match of the year out of them. And maybe that's still the case because from what I understand, this isn't the last match of them either. So we might still get something that will beat out that Raw match we had. But I still think that one's the one to beat out of them too because the end was really great too, where the end in this one wasn't. Yeah, we had all the rowdy stuff all throughout it that helped ruin this match because the ring work was pretty good. I mean, just like the last match, these two looked really great wrestling each other. It's just the constant distraction of going to talk to Piper, and last time, if just seeing the Ford Bronco wasn't enough, they had to give you the clear OJ helicopter footage of the police chasing him down the highway. They're really going heavy on the OJ similarities here and really destroying the match because of it. I was starting at the very beginning, I was saying, this was at least a 3 or a 4 star, but I think because of all the bullshit and the ending not being so great, it probably brought it down to a 2 star in my opinion.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. A 2 star seems to be about where I'm falling. What do you think, Joe?
Unfortunate for 2 reasons for me with the Roddy Piper phone call and distractions, because not only did it ruin this match for us, but it kind of ruins the match that I just was going to possibly give 5 stars.
That's a great point.
Because, I think I've mentioned this before, like, let your talent do the comedy work. It was hilarious with just the two of them fighting. And now Vince is being funny with the OJ stuff and like saying, oh, this looks really familiar. Where have we seen this before? And it's, I don't know. The Bronco chase was 2 years ago at this point. So, I mean, I know it's a significant time in American history, an event that took place, but it was like 2 years ago.
It's just, why are you doing that on WrestleMania? If you wanted to do this type of shit on a Raw, that's fine. Right. But people paid for this. This is a WrestleMania match between two great wrestlers here, and it's ruined by Raw-like antics.
Well, and the other thing that shouldn't go unnoticed is that they're really kind of not giving the live crowd their money's worth because the live crowd is not seeing any of this shit. Well,
I would say that's for the better.
They probably had to watch the Brawl on a screen and didn't get to really see it very well, especially if you're up in the nosebleeds or whatever. But yeah, I think with the match itself, I like that Vince appears to be a fan of Stone Cold Steve Austin's work already. He's giving him a match on WrestleMania. I guess it's helping Stone Cold build his shit heel gimmick right now. So that's maybe the only positive to take out of this. And I'm going to give it 1 star just because I'm really disappointed. And the fact that they went to Roddy Piper more than once, it was at least, twice?
Oh, definitely 3, I think.
And then the Bronco video, that just really ruined it.
Yeah, it's kind of the MO of the WWF and Vince McMahon right now, isn't it? You have the shitty joke of Billionaire Ted then getting beat to death over 10 weeks. Now we've got what could have maybe by some have been considered maybe a clever reference with a white Ford Bronco in the background, and they could have just left it at that. Like, hey, wink, wink, there's a white Ford Bronco that Rowdy Piper got.
No, they had to beat us over the fucking head with it.
They had to go to the actual police fucking footage of the chase.
Have him finally catch Goldust, have them fight again, and then it be over, and it's 5 stars. But you can't do that.
Yeah, the way that Vince points out to us, hey, this footage looks familiar.
Right.
If you have to tell somebody, hey, this is a joke and it's funny, it's not a joke, nor is it funny.
Yeah. Like I said, it's 2 years at this point. So Saturday Night Live, the late night shows, they've all already beat this to
into
death.
The ground at this point.
And when you're doing a live show, the live crowd is not seeing any of this. So,
and like I said, though, for the better, they got to just watch a match.
Right.
They weren't interrupted like we were.
Speaking of the match, Dave Meltzer gave it 2 stars, like you guys. He said both guys worked hard, but there was no heat and the finish died live. The work itself was good in spots and slightly off in other spots.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty fair assessment. All right. That takes us now to what I'm sure is going to be the highlight of the evening. The Ultimate Warrior defeats Hunter Hurst Helmsley with a young lady by the name of, it's listed here as Sable. Do they say Sable or do they say Rena Marrow? In 1 minute and 36 seconds. Womp, 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 womp. All right, guys, coming out of the Ultimate Warrior match, and I think the one word that could accurately describe that was terrible.
I feel like we just hit pause not that long ago.
Yeah.
Here we are again.
1 minute and 36 seconds was the official given time on in my research here, and we were discussing during this, we were curious as to whether or not the entrances took longer than the actual match itself, because man, they really milked them.
And I think that's a guarantee.
Oh yeah.
As far as the match itself goes, it was not a whole lot to write home about. It was basically the Ultimate Warrior no-selling every single possible thing that Hunter Hurst Helmsley could have done. The only real notable thing about the match at all was the fact that the Ultimate Warrior is indeed back, and we've also been introduced to Hunter's ring valet for this match, Sable, which will be an important part of the future. And a somewhat important part of the near future is who we got introduced to after this match, and that is the Wild Man, Mark Marrow. I have fond memories of Mark Marrow from my childhood. I look forward to seeing if it stacks up, looking back on it now 25 years later. But it was very good to see him there, and he cut a pretty decent promo. It got us tied into Sable coming up, because as Hunter was exiting his match with Sable, he bumped into Mark Marrow. There was a brief scuffle after Mark did not like the way that Hunter was treating Sable. So it is very good to see that is coming up. Oh, and by the way, guys, we got an update on Roddy Piper and the white Ford Bronco apparently getting blocked by what looked like a white Toyota Tercel. So that we have an expert's opinion. Ryan, was that in fact a white Toyota Tercel?
It really, I'm pretty sure it was. The white Toyota Tercel was my very first vehicle. I had an 88 Tercel. I don't know if that was an 88 for sure, but it was a Toyota Tercel. I am a specialist on that.
Do you think the Tercel could have withstood the beating that Piper and Goldust gave to that Lincoln Continental or whatever that car was?
Oh, I believe it could.
Really?
I beat the living balls off that car. I used to Dukes of Hazzard enter that thing. I mean, it went through a lot with me.
So what did you think of the Ultimate Warrior's return to the WWF?
Well, it was terrible. I mean, you said the word, right? It makes me think of like my childhood, because I loved the Ultimate Warrior in my childhood. I love the Ultimate Warrior, and hearing his music come on, just the dun da 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 da, when it started and his end, when he started grabbing the ropes, I felt like a little kid again. I was excited, but that was killed very, very quickly. The moment it started, his work was terrible. His selling was non-existent. And then right into, we have Hunter, who is one of the company's rising stars, and he gives Warrior the pedigree, and the infamous scene where Warrior just immediately stands up and starts saying no. He doesn't accept any of it, and then he just annihilates Hunter, squashes him, and it's done. And what a terrible, terrible comeback for the Ultimate Warrior, and a terrible job of treating one of your upcoming stars in Hunter Hurst Helmsley. If there is any little gems to pull out of this, it was the end with Mark Marrow, his promo he cut, which was good. And then I didn't remember that this was how Sable ended up with Mark Marrow, was him kind of sticking up for her as Hunter was being the typical Hunter that we know with his valets. So that was interesting. But outside of that, I'm going to go, it's a dud. I mean, how can I go with anything other than a dud?
Yeah, I 100% agree with Dud, but Ryan brings up a great point that I didn't mention. Hunter Hurst Helmsley did the best job he possibly could have working with the Warrior here. I mean, what did you think, Joe?
Yeah, I think that's something that probably gets lost in this whole thing when people talk about it. There's really two things that attract people to the Ultimate Warrior. It's how does he look physically and his entrance. And both of those were pretty good. I mean, the entrance was good and he looks to be in great shape. The thing is, when you bring a guy back like this who can't really do anything and only gives you those two things, it's kind of hard to sell it to a crowd, because if you are 9 or 10 years old in this live crowd, you probably don't even know who the Ultimate Warrior is. So, like, why do you care? And that's really the demographic that you're targeting.
But he did get a good pop. I'll give him that.
The Warrior, sure, yeah, he did. And then if you're someone who's older, you're thinking, this is kind of outdated now. Like, this isn't the type of wrestling that we get anymore, especially when we're about to see a 60-man Iron Man match with two great wrestlers.
Especially as soon as he started wrestling.
Right. And he's shown that he can have good matches. I mean, he had an entertaining match with Hulk Hogan and Macho Man at WrestleManias. So, I mean, he can do it. It's just, this was a mess. This just was a total joke. And yeah, it's a dud. It's a joke to put this on WrestleMania. It's horrible and nothing but a dud. And it's going to be 4 duds all around, because Dave Meltzer also gave it a dud.
Fittingly.
He said that Jim Hellwig was a little smaller than at his peak, but he's also 39 years old, and he was quite a bit larger and more cut than when he returned the last time.
Well, I mean, I guess that's good.
Sure.
And we have to note, though, this is before the curtain call. Mm-hmm. So he's not being even punished yet he was told, go out there and do this.
Yeah.
Look like a piece of fucking shit.
And as far as Mark Marrow goes, I always wonder what could have been with Mark Marrow if Sable didn't exist. And I think we're going to learn, I guess, the hard way with that over these next couple years. With that, Sable, to me, like, I know everybody has an opinion on Sable. I think for me, like, she looks good here. But once she starts talking and gets
that's the
heavily
thing. The talking
pushed,
ruins everything about her.
Yeah, it's a flash in the pan, and she disappears then. So, yeah, it's a shame, because Mark Marrow, I was telling Bartlett when we were watching this, Johnny B. Bad, his was a terrible gimmick in WCW, but he had awesome matches. Yeah, it's a shame.
I think it's safe to say that anybody in WCW could have a good match if they come out shooting a t-shirt gun.
Yeah.
But getting back to this match, though, it's funny if you go back and listen to the different podcasts that talk about this event. They get really specific whenever they talk about bringing the Ultimate Warrior back here. They talk about how they were booking an attraction. They don't say booking a wrestler, booking an angle, booking anything even remotely wrestling. They're booking the attraction.
Yeah, it's almost like it was this year's Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Except Lawrence Taylor had a better match than a guy who's not a wrestler. Had a better match than the guy who is kind of a wrestler.
Those shoot interviews also talk about how they put him with Hunter because they knew that Hunter was one of the few people in the company at the time that was still young and hungry enough to be willing to work with and lose to the Ultimate Warrior and take a real risk here. I mean, we've got people like Vader who are ultra concerned about, their losses and how it might affect their earnings in Japan. We've got people like the Steiners in the past and Scott Hall right now that renegotiate because they want to make sure that they have options to go places and do things. And these are all based upon how strong their characters now are. But we have Hunter Hurst Helmsley here who was willing to have his finisher, the pedigree that has not been kicked out of yet,
completely buried,
made a complete mockery of. That's dedication to the business.
Yeah, and it's not even like he kicked out on 2. He completely no-sold it and popped back up immediately.
Yeah, and I'll give Hunter credit for that, for being willing to do it. And I'm sure it's because he was so young in the business. But I can only blame Vince McMahon and the WWF for treating someone who has, since he's entered, just continued week in and week out to be a fantastic heel and a fantastic wrestler. So to reward his great wrestling like this is just sad.
Well, from what I've heard in some of these shoot interviews you talked about was that this was supposed to be more of a match. And I guess the Warrior just at the last minute was like, no, here's what we're going to do. And this is what we got.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
Well, I think that's what I've heard before.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes you wonder just how fucking stupid was I as a kid. And I say that, thinking back to 8-year-old me, but we also have to remember, and we've mentioned this before, that the three of us were the 18-year-old us's that dressed as the Ultimate Warrior and went to see the 2001 Invasion pay-per-view at the Gund Arena in Cleveland. So,
and just in case everyone out there is wondering, the Ultimate Warrior was not involved in that pay-per-view in any way and wasn't involved with the WWF for years at that point. We just all loved him so much, we still decided to dress ourselves up and go as him, but we still had on rose-colored glasses, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, and I'm still a fan of the Warrior. I mean, yeah, this is shit. This is total garbage, but the Warrior in his prime was a pretty big deal. That's always going to be there. You can't take that away from him.
I had the Ultimate Warrior's entrance music on mixtapes.
Sure, yeah.
We also have something that we talked about already here, but I just wanted to touch on briefly again. Sable. I personally blame two people for the complete collapse and downfall of women's wrestling in the WWF. The first is Sunny, and I love Sunny. As much as I love Sunny, she is still partially to blame. The other person to blame is Sable. Vince McMahon realized that if you had a good-looking woman with a pair of tits that can talk, she would be a draw. You would end up with the most downloaded woman in AOL download history at the time. But then he realized, hey, wait a second, if you take a woman that has even bigger tits and less of a personality, you can make even more money as long as she doesn't kick up too much of a fuss. And then we get Sable, and then we get the Divas division, and then we get lingerie matches.
And women want to be me.
Well, I mean, I don't think you can blame them. You have to blame Vince McMahon they're just doing what they're told.
Yes, that is a very fair and equitable point. You are right. Well, guys, we're coming out of that match now then and into our next match. The Undertaker with Paul Bearer defeats Diesel in 16 minutes and 46 seconds. All right. Coming out of the Diesel Undertaker match, guys, I can't believe how much I am looking forward to not having Diesel in the WWF anymore. And I really think that every single time I hear Vince McMahon say the word Diesel, I get another gray hair.
What about Big Daddy D?
The Big D. This match was, this was nowhere near the worst Diesel match I've ever seen. As far as the in-ring work goes, it was mostly okay. But for me, this highlighted every single thing that I don't like about Diesel. And that is just, and we were talking about it while we were watching it, just the general disingenuousness of the Diesel character. Diesel in his promos talks smart, but in the ring he acts stupid. He's supposed to be cool, but he's also supposed to be the bad guy. No, wait, he's the good guy. We don't know what the fuck Diesel is ever really doing, and it doesn't really look like Diesel knows what the fuck he's doing half the time, because he's just trying to be cool, and I think that's his baseline. It doesn't matter if it makes sense. It doesn't matter if it's part of the story. He's just trying to look cool, and he fucking sucks at it. And again, I am looking forward to the day where we no longer have to see Diesel in a match, just because this is an Undertaker match and because most of the action wasn't too bad. I'm going with 1 star on this. I refuse to give Diesel anything higher than that ever again. Joe, please, what did you think?
Yeah, I agree with you that I'm looking forward to no longer dealing with Diesel, but at the same time, he already put his notice in, and he still goes out there and acts like Diesel. So
yeah, he didn't just completely give up on it.
Yeah, I guess you got to give him credit for that. But yeah, you're right. I'm looking forward to him leaving. And I mentioned before the match started that instead of going out in a match against his buddy Shawn Michaels, he should have maybe had a casket match to be his last match in WWF. But I guess friendship took over, and he had to work with Shawn before he left. So we'll see that soon. This match was boring as hell. I'm sorry. It was boring the whole way through. It started out kind of fast-paced, and you don't expect it to be fast the whole way through, but like the ending just kind of dragged. They did what, 2 jackknifes, 3 maybe? There were at least 2
jackknives, yeah.
And he's taking forever. Like he's just kind of like trying to work the crowd, but they're not really caring. And then the Undertaker does his choke slam, and then he takes forever to get into the tombstone and just finish it. I would have preferred just a quick choke slam, tombstone, end of match. I'm going with 1 star on this as well.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with much of anything you guys were saying here. The in-ring work wasn't bad. As far as 2 7-foot, 300-pounders go, they didn't look bad together. They were getting their spots down, but when you have those 2 big guys like that, it usually, unless it's exceptional, is going to be a little bit boring. When you have 2 monsters, it's going to be a slow, lumbering match, and that's kind of what it ended up as, even if I did enjoy a lot of the build-up to this match. But Diesel, I agree with Joe a little bit here I'll give him a little bit of credit, and he already put in his notice. He knows he's gone. So he came out here and put in what was definitely not the worst Diesel match we've seen. We've seen way worse Diesel matches. So this was not a terrible Diesel match, and I thought the Undertaker looked pretty good here too. But 16 minutes was a little bit long for 2 monsters like this, and the ending started to drag. But I did enjoy that the Undertaker won this, and it was a clean ending. There was no shenanigans. The Undertaker just won, so we could put a pin in this feud with him and Diesel. He beat him fair and square. So that was nice. I'm going to go 1 notch higher than both you, solely because, as I have kind of mentioned leading up to this, lots of memories in this match. This is where I pick up as a 14-year-old boy and start watching wrestling religiously, and watching this match again, I remembered sitting in my living room watching it on my old cheater box. So it brought back some fond memories, so I'm going to bump it up to a 2 star just for that.
Joe, what'd Meltzer have to say?
Well, Ryan's rating is closer to Dave's. He gave it 2.25 stars. He didn't really give any comments. He just kind of recapped the match.
Yeah, and it is worth noting something that was just a little bit interesting about this, the way that The Undertaker sped himself up to draw a contrast with Diesel, because, I mean, they're both lumbering monster 7-footers, and to have 2 of those in the ring at the same time would be boring, and this did end up being boring, but at least the Undertaker put in like an effort to make it look different and new and fresh. It did not translate to the crowd, though. That was a quiet ass crowd, and I was very surprised.
And they're about to see a 60-minute match too, so.
And I pointed out, you bringing up the Undertaker kind of speeding things up. We saw something that the Undertaker will use quite a bit during his American Badass days. He pulled out the MMA punches a little bit with the quick rights and lefts to Diesel's face. So that was a little interesting to see.
Yeah. And as much as we talk about how much we hate Diesel's run in general in WWF, we talked about the professionalism with him doing business. He's not even working. He's got a $1 million contract with WCW. He doesn't care, but he's still going out there and doing this on the same show as some dipshit like the Ultimate Warrior, who is terrible at doing business. So, I mean, you got to give him credit for that.
Yeah.
And he's going to work through his contract. He's not going to walk out on the company like a lot of guys do. So definitely got to respect him for that, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Something that I do not have to respect and will not respect, however, is Todd Pettingzoo. Todd Pettingzoo comes up after this match, and he is there. He's shown up once already. We didn't mention it before, but it's kind of a shock to see him here. He looks a little bit thinner. He has his head buzzed with for those of you out there familiar with men's haircuts, it's like they put the number 2 attachment on the buzzer.
Yeah, I think maybe he went to prison in the last time we saw him.
And he informs us that things are getting closer, and indeed they are. There's video footage of the gold, which we find out is a Cadillac, not a Lincoln Continental. It's a Cadillac. The gold Cadillac busting through barriers with the white Ford Bronco in chase behind. And this is where we decided to start the next segment, which we're going to call Part 2 of the Hollywood Backlot Brawl. This is, again, Part 2, Roddy Piper, Gold Dust, in what has so far been a we'll say an average of 4.75 between the three of us going into part 2, and we'll see where it takes us now as we are getting to the arena. So, our next match. Gentlemen, we are coming out of part 2 of the Hollywood Backlot Brawl, and my God, that was entertaining as hell.
I haven't laughed that hard in a match in a really fucking long time. I mean, my cheeks are hurting me right now from laughing so much.
It's hard to describe. There was no official present. There was no, it's listed online as ending in a no contest. So there were no rules. There was nothing official about this other than it was two guys beating the shit out of each other. And that's exactly what they gave us. These two guys beat the shit out of each other. I think we can, look at it from two angles. There's the comedy spot, which there are certainly very funny things that happened here. What did we say? 13, Joe? Nut shots, I think?
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
At least 13.
A lot of nut shots.
And the way that we'll hold on to the way that it ended. But if we set that aside, there was also some pretty good just brawling going on here. Not quite to the level of punching a guy for real, but just some really good looking stuff. And as short as the buildup was for this, and we've talked in previous episodes in the archives about how this was a quick substitution for Scott Hall, Roddy Piper rather than Scott Hall. This was a hell of a way to just pay off that short buildup. This was a fantastic match to watch. And if we're thinking in terms of part 1 and part 2 together, this was absolutely a 5-star match for me. Joe, please, what did you think?
Would you like to explain the ending of this first before I go?
So the way that this ended was with Roddy Piper ripping the vinyl jumpsuit off of Goldust to reveal a lingerie set, a nightie. I don't know what exactly you would call that, but there were garters involved. There was a corset,
women's underwear,
things that attached to the garters up to the underwear, and
he strips him down, and then it gets caught around Goldust's ankles. So Roddy Piper then uses the vinyl suit wrapped around Goldust's ankles to just kind of roll him around the ring for a while. And I was afraid that Ryan was going to piss himself, but that is the fantastic ending to this match.
Yeah, I will say the ending was funny. So basically what we had here was we had a 5-star, 4-star from Bartlett backlot brawl to start this.
Well, he finished with a 5 though.
Yeah. But the start was this backlot brawl, which to me was 5 stars, very entertaining. Then we brought it down to probably what I would call a dud with the Bronco chase.
Yeah, you are right. I did not.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to include that in the...
Well, you kind of have to.
I guess
we had the phone calls.
I've already factored it into other matches, though.
Yeah, we had the phone calls with Roddy Piper. Then we had a couple other, I guess, incidents with this stuff. Then we get the cars finally meeting up with each other at the arena, and these guys bring it back into the arena and finish the match. I guess you can say they finished the match. Yeah, I guess, I don't know, the ending was funny. They did a kiss. They did a kiss. They did a nut grab. They did a lot of ass grabbing. There was a lot of things. Yeah, spanking. There's 2 things that I'm sick of.
Did we mention nut shots?
Yeah, plenty of those. 2 things I'm definitely sick of hearing is capacity crowd and mind games throughout this whole pay-per-view.
Isn't Mind Games going to be the name of one of the in your houses, I think?
Most likely, yeah. So, I mean, there was a lot of goofy shit, but I will say that backlot brawl for me was a 5-star. The ending was a 5-star, but I guess overall I'd probably have to just kind of go in between and give it a 3, unfortunately. I think if they would have just kept it to the backlot brawl and then the ending piece, perfect. But there was all the stupid shit in between.
For me, I'm with the backlot brawl, obviously 5-star. what they were doing in the ring, I agree with Bartlett. It was just them continuing to kick the shit out of each other, and it looked really good. I mean, it was clear it was no ref. Again, it reminded me of just those hardcore matches that we would see later on in Raw. And the ending, I've never laughed so much in my life, or at least not up until this point. I think this is the hardest I've laughed when he ripped off the vinyl suit and revealed the lingerie, and the way that Goldust acted and ran out of the ring, and he was covering himself up like if anyone's listening to this podcast, they would remember the Nintendo game Rampage. And when you would die as one of the beasts, you would shrink down to a naked human, and then you would cover yourself up and try and limp off the side of the stage. And that's what Goldust reminded me of. You're the shrunken Rampage people. Joe, you bring up a good point with the in-between with all of the car chases, but I'm not sure I can count them in there. To me, I'm going with the shit in the back lot, which was 5-star, and the shit in the ring here, which was 5-star. So I can't do anything but also land on an all-around 5-star match for me. I mean, this isn't a match of the year candidate. No. Let's clarify that. This isn't match of the year candidate shit. But in entertainment wise shit go, this is 5-star shit.
Easily the best, I guess, match, for lack of a better word, that we've seen in this program.
Absolutely.
I mean, easily. Now I have to ask, what makes this so funny, but the Harvey Whippleman and Howard Finkel match,
I fucking knew it.
It sickened us. What is it?
The lingerie. I think it has to be the lingerie.
See, for me, again, I go back to, even though this may have been creative's idea, this is the talent being funny.
Yeah, I know. I have to agree with that too. Because the second part of the lingerie is Goldust.
Because the whole thing, if you look at the whole thing, the stuff with the Bronco chase is absolutely Vince McMahon. Like, there's no one else. And the stuff with the talent was all just perfect.
I think another significant difference might be we are much, much, much more emotionally invested in these two performers as opposed to Whippleman and the Fink.
Right.
I mean, at the time, I distinctly remember not even not caring, but like I deliberately wanted it to be over and to get the fuck off of my screen. Whereas these are people that, even though, like I said before, it's a quick substitute, it's still people that we know and we like and we've come to appreciate. I thought it was interesting that once again, Ryan and I fall on the more appreciative end of a Goldust scenario than you do.
Well, but for me, though, it's not because of Goldust or with the other stuff that I didn't like before.
I did, whenever you made that point, I did seriously consider reevaluating my star rating because that was a very fair point you had there. But with that clarification that we are not talking match of the year candidate in the least bit, I still have to say, just for my own sake, that I'm going to ignore the rest of that shit. As much as it did suck, and it did, I'm going to ignore it and keep it at 5 stars. But yeah, I really do think it's the emotional investment we have in these guys.
Yeah, most likely. And it's also, Goldust has been this annoying guy who's been playing these mind games for weeks. And now you got to see him be humiliated, which is obviously the payoff. But also Marlena, great use of Marlena here.
Oh, yeah.
Because she wasn't really involved. And then it's like, okay, let's involve her in this little comedy thing at the end. And it was great. So that is good use of the Marlena character.
And to bring it to the stuff with Harvey Whippleman and the Thing. Those are two non-wrestlers, though. So, yes, they got stripped down at the end, but that wasn't led up to with 5-star entertainment. It was fucking boring bullshit. Two guys that can't fight, wrestle, make anything look real. Then they rip the clothes off of each other. So there was nothing that was entertaining there, where this was hilarious payoff off of 5-star entertainment. So they're not comparable.
When it's all said and done, at least 2 members of the Wrasslin Raw family would rather see Goldust in lingerie than Sable in lingerie.
Yeah.
He's a better actor.
Absolutely. You guys made a great point about Marlena, too. This is twice now that we've seen Goldust involved in what I think of in my mind as like a classic ending to like maybe a 60s sitcom. Like the first time we had him in the trench coat with the briefcase escaping, and it was just very old school cartoony.
Yeah.
And in this match, we have it yet again with Sable or Marlena throwing the coat over him and ushering him out.
They're both acting like old comedy movie stars. Like, and that's what.
Yeah, they're playing this gimmick to great effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really, really great work as far as that goes. Well, that led us into the build-up for what's going to happen next. We're going to have more vignettes. This time they're more personal. It's camera on the face of Shawn Michaels. Then we have an interview with Bret Hart. This is just them talking about what it means for them to be going into this match. Once again, everybody did this really well, and it was another really appropriate and tasteful way to continue the way they've been building towards this match. So, without further ado, we are going into the main event of WrestleMania 12. Shawn Michaels with Jose Lothario is going to defeat Bret Hart to win the WWF Championship in an Iron Man match. This will last 1 hour, 1 minute, and 52 seconds. All right, guys, we are at an hour, 1 minute, 52 seconds later, and while this match, there's so much to talk about within it, it brought up, in my mind, many questions. And I think I'd like to just, lob some questions at you guys to get the discussion started here. First and foremost, in my mind, of the many things that we learned about the competitors here, one of the more interesting things that comes to mind here is Earl Hebner truly the worst referee in WWF history? Joe, please address that first.
I don't know if he's the worst, but maybe the most overrated in history because, the more you watch of him, the more you realize it's like he's kind of shitty. He's just not a good ref.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that in him being drastically overrated. And of course, outside of him doing this match, he's also going to screw over Bret Hart. So that can't be overlooked either. So yeah, pretty bad though. He's not a good ref.
Yeah, I think at least 4 different times, probably more, because by the time I started paying attention and counting, I counted 4 times. He counted the outside count out over again. So he would get to, counting 5 or 6 and then start over again at 2. And just little things like that constantly happening. At one point, he even gestured with his arms up in the air. I don't know what to do.
You have to wonder, too, if you're at the event and you're in the front row, you're probably even more confused than us on TV because you can literally hear all the counts if you're up there. Yeah. So those people have to be thinking, like, what the hell? Absolutely. Like, he just counted to 5 and now he's back at 2 for no reason.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we saw Dr. Dre in the front row there, and he looked quite perturbed about things.
We did not see.
Did not
see Dr. Dre.
I'm pretty sure that was Dr. Dre. Puffy was there with him.
There were no stars.
That just proves you have no idea what you're talking about.
There were no stars this year. No Nicky Turturro to save any matches, nothing.
Yes, that is correct.
The star of the show was that timekeeper that took the Sweet Chin music.
Yeah, he took it like a champ.
Absolutely drilled this poor son of a bitch. And, we just had 2 guys beat the shit out of each other in a parking lot and then in the ring. And then we had 2 guys beat the shit out of each other for an hour straight. And throughout all of that, the only person that gets taken out on a stretcher is the fucking timekeeper, which was just
poor
beautiful.
Soul.
But as far as the action in the ring goes, we have so much here to work with. Ryan, what did you think?
I thought this was a fantastic match. I mean, the only thing that you can maybe take away from it is the fact that it's an hour long. So at times you kind of get, it just starts to drag at points, but not the fault of either of the 2 wrestlers here. yes, they applied a couple chokeholds and arm bars here and there to catch their breath, which they have to do in an hour-long match. It was not excessive by any means. For the most part, they kind of kept to a beginning of the match. Shawn Michaels was the one that was the aggressor, and he kind of was in control for almost a half hour. Then the second half hour was mostly Bret Hart up until the very end when they extend the match longer because we had no winner, where Shawn Michaels takes back over. And through that entire 60 minutes, I was very impressed with the conditioning of both of these guys, because the amount of just filler and time wasting was really kept to a minimum for an hour-long match, which outnumbers the matches that we've seen by more than double, I think, at this point. Like, most of the matches we've seen, even the longest ones, came in under a half hour. Yeah. So very impressive. And, it was a good way to make Bret not just have to lose. I mean, after this type of a match, you don't really blame anyone for a loss after the display that was put on by these two. So to have Shawn Michaels finally win it here, I thought it was a lot of just great storytelling, great ring work. If it just wasn't quite as long as it was, it could have been a 5-star match. And I think it being as long as it was just knocked it down one into a 4-star match for me. But I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, these two guys are so good to the point where we are picking apart Earl Hebner's work.
Yes.
Like, they are wrestling for an hour, and they're so good that we're just distracted by Earl's terrible referee work. So that just goes to show. And we have this match, and we have the Screwjob match in late 97. Do these guys even have any other matches? I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they have
I
one
think
more
this was
in between there or not.
I think it's just those two, because they both refused to work with each other for a while.
Right.
And it's a shame, because clearly they are, they can put on a great match, even though they absolutely hate each other. And even for an hour, these guys always talk about how they put each other's lives into, I'm putting my body in this other guy's hands. And that goes to show, they went for an hour. They have to be actually exhausted.
Yeah.
After.
Yeah, there's no way to not be.
Yeah, halfway through. And they're still getting through this with probably no injuries. The match is good. It's just the gimmick sort of ties it down a little bit, because it's almost like I like the gimmick because I loved the build up to this match. I loved that, the training videos and all that stuff. And you would only do that if you knew it was going to be an Iron Man match. But then the Iron Man match gimmick sort of tied it down a little bit, because it's like, as a fan, you're thinking, well, why do I have to watch the first half hour? I can just watch the second half and still see what happens. I've always looked at it this way with that sudden death rule. I feel like Bret is getting screwed, because he lasted without getting pinned or submitting or getting counted out. So he should be the winner of the match.
And not just that. When the match ended, he had the figure 4 or the sharpshooter applied.
Yeah.
So if you're going to extend the match should be extended with the sharpshooter reapplied.
Right. Yeah. And maybe that's why they never said before that if 60 minutes runs out, we're going into sudden death, because they wanted to do that sharpshooter thing. I guess Pat Patterson was a big part of this match, so kudos to him too for putting this together, because it is a great match. We saw a lot of stuff from both of these guys that we'd never see them do. One thing with Shawn Michaels in particular is, you guys know how all of his matches, the beginning is always him kind of goofing around and showboating.
Yeah.
He didn't do that. These guys just went right into the match.
Yeah.
That was nice to see. Yeah, I'm going to give it 4 stars too, because it's great, but I think the gimmick does kind of tie it down a little bit. I would have rather have just seen these guys go for 45, 50 minutes in a regular match. But like I said, it's tough because I love the build up to it. But I also see this as sort of a goodbye to Bret Hart, because we saw the music video, we saw this other shit. This is Shawn's time now. We know it's not going to go well.
Yeah.
And we're not going to see Bret for a long time. So we're losing Bret Hart. We're losing Diesel. We're losing Razor Ramon. But the good thing is we got Stone Cold Steve Austin now, and we have Mankind coming in. So those are things to look forward to. But yeah, 4 stars from me.
Yeah, it really felt like it was nipping on the heels of a 5-star match.
Yeah.
But like you said, the Iron Man gimmick just held it back a little bit.
With the sudden death.
Yeah, it just held it back enough to not be a 5-star.
Well, my rating is 4-star, and it has to do with the gimmick, but not quite what you guys are saying. And I mentioned this while we were watching. How is anybody expected to be able to beat either of these guys now in less than an hour?
True as well.
Right.
And so my main gripe with this is that there were no pinfalls for that 60 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the 60-minute time limit to this and it being a longer match. If we would have had pinfalls, if we would have had submissions, if we would have had anything during that 60 minutes to help to build tension. I mean, having no pinfalls and going into sudden death is one way of building tension and getting to that kind of, final release. But at the same time, we could have traded submissions and pinfalls to get maybe a 3-3 count.
Yeah.
Going into the last hour to trigger that sudden.
Or at least a 1-1. You know what I mean? At least a 1-1. Because, at an hour long, they seem unbeatable. Who can beat them if both of these guys can go a full hour and not be pinned or submitted or counted out? Who the fuck could beat them? So it does kind of break your believability in this gimmick. Yeah, I agree with that.
One more question that I need to ask is, how many loads did Vince blow as the belt was being strapped upon Shawn Michaels? Did either of you get to take a tally? Because there were too many for me to keep track of.
Probably the same amount of loogies that were in the ring. That Earl Hebner, as many loogies that were spit in that ring. Remember when Hunter Hurst Helmsley was doing the vaudeville, slipping in the mud on that?
In
Earl Hebner should have been doing that on loogies.
I counted at least 3 full orgasms from Vince giving up after Shawn Michaels won. So he's definitely got to clean his shorts after tonight.
Probably one of the more telegraphed victories and title changes that we can remember. I mean, the entrance was cool. The zip line thing is kind of cheesy, but you have to think if you were there, that would be pretty awesome to see. But yeah, it was pretty telegraphed. And like I said, it's kind of weird that this is almost like a goodbye. You can kind of see the seeds planted on the screw job because it's kind of a goodbye to Brett. Now, I know he left on his own here, but it's almost like, well, is he going to come back? Is he going to go to WCW? Is he going to do what Hulk Hogan did and just go to WCW or what? You don't really know at this point. So,
what'd Meltzer have to say about it?
Dave Meltzer gave this match 4.25 stars.
Okay.
He just basically recapped the match, but he said that he pointed out that Brett walked out rather than doing a symbolic passing of the torch, which I don't know. I didn't really pay attention to that. But I could see why he points that out.
Yeah, that didn't really strike me.
The whole
as
thing
special.
sort of made Brett look like a heel a little bit because he was that whole thing with the sudden death thing. That's something you would do to a Jeff Jarrett. Like, Jeff Jarrett, get your ass back in the ring. It's not over yet. Something you would do to a heel. So yeah, he kind of got the heel treatment, I think, a little bit.
All right, and that is where our pay-per-view ends. So now it gets down to the most important question of all. And Ryan, I'd like you to answer this first. Did you get your money's worth?
I would have to say I absolutely got my money's worth. We had a shit ton of good, or at least serviceable matches at the beginning, and then we finished it with a 5-star finish to the second part of the Goldust Rowdy backyard or backlot brawl, and then finish it off with a 4-star 60-minute Bret Hart Shawn Michaels match. So I don't think there's really any way for me to say I didn't get my money's worth. I definitely got my money's worth.
Yeah, I agree, especially when we think about last year's WrestleMania.
Yes.
I mean,
yes, for sure.
This one, I don't know if it was because they wanted to keep costs down or maybe they just learned their lesson from last year, but they had no celebrity involvement, zero, zilch.
Yeah, except for Dr. Dre.
Yeah. He was just randomly there.
And Puffy.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say so. I would say we got our money's worth. I mean, Probably one of the worst WrestleMania moments of all time happened on this show with the Ultimate Warrior. But but I'd have to say, outside of that, it was pretty good. And the Iron Man match did not disappoint.
Yeah, I think this is the first time that I can, since we've started asking the question, this is the first time that I can very confidently say that I absolutely got my money's worth. Look at the things that we've complained about here. We complain about Jake Roberts, but at the same time, we put over Vader and Yokozuna in that match. It was the two most least likely people put on the best performance there. We had a great stuff with Steve Austin and Savio Vega. We made fun of the Ultimate Warrior, but that's a minute 36 out of this entire pay-per-view. It's nothing. We bitch about Diesel, but they still did a great match for 16 minutes. We bitch about, not bitch, but, there's the kind of cartoony, unserious nature of the O.J. Simpson White Bronco thing with the backlot brawl. But still, that's peanuts compared to the awesomeness that's the match. So, yeah, really, any of the things that I can think of to complain about in this pay-per-view are just nitpicking for the sake of nitpicking.
Yeah, it's just being a fucking dick bag. Trying to nitpick little tiny things to, this was a definite win in my book.
Right. Yeah, there's people that might bitch about the Iron Man match, like, oh, it's too long or whatever. But what would you rather? Would you rather those guys have like a 20-minute match and then you get two other shit like fucking Tatanka versus, I don't know,
Aldo Montoya?
Yeah, like what else are you going to get? I'd rather see those two for 60 minutes than two other shitty matches.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. So, Joe, do you have the Wrestling Observer breakdown of the numbers for us?
Yes, I do. The Reader's Poll gave this show a 68.7% thumbs up.
I would have thought a little higher, but
yeah, a 24.8% thumbs down, and then just 6% in the middle. I'm sure you guys could guess what the worst match was voted.
Yes. Yeah, that's easy. No.
Absolutely not.
No.
Oh, wait, that's a match?
The minute 30.
I thought it was an attraction, not a match.
Ultimate Warrior, Hunter Hurst Helmsley was the worst, and I'm sure you guys could guess what the best match was voted.
The backlot brawl.
Well, Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels was voted as the best match. So,
of course, yeah.
Yeah, this is a WrestleMania that really, I don't know, nobody, like those thumbs down, 24%, like what did you not like about it? What would you want to see?
Yeah, what were you expecting?
Yeah.
Not every match in a pay-per-view is going to be a home run.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure your word for these people are dick bags.
Yes.
Dick bags, yeah. Those would be the 24% of dick bags that watched this pay-per-view.
Those assholes out there with Soma softies. All right. Well, yeah, it was great to see another uptick in what is an upward trend for the WWF in 1996. And that's it, folks. We are done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. If you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can email us at WRASSLINRAW and just add @gmail.com to the end of that to submit questions or comments. Check us out on social media and on every podcast subscription platform. While you're there, don't forget to follow and subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and let your friends know how much cooler they would be if they became Rawheads like you and me. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at the Raw that aired on April 1st, 1996, with matches featuring Mark Marrow, Mankind, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.